Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Trending in Hollywood. I am Scott Menzel, and I'm just trying to keep things interesting on this show because we don't actually have a lot to talk about today. But we always have something to talk about in this show. You know that. It's always going to be a discussion, regardless of whether or not it was a slow news week, because Demetri and I are talkers. So here he is, Demetri Panos, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey there. You recovered. You sounded so kind of dour. Hello, everyone. Yes, we will talk. Hey, we're back.
Dramatic effect, Demetri. Dramatic effect.
Oh, I know nothing of such things. Other than we are back from space after last week. That was crazy. Don't ask us how we landed, because no one seems to ask how they got back and landed at Earth in their little Pontiac Fiero. Nobody really gave a shit. Pardon my French, but we are back from space. It was a good trip. I could say that the food up there was great, but the atmosphere sucked. But glad to be back on Terra.
But we brought back a lot of money with us. That was sort of the most important thing.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We brought back about 70 million, and I think we did a good job with it. We did a good job with it.
Yes, we did. Yeah, it was good stuff. Good for you, F9. and all that budget went into Charlize Theron's hairstylist.
There you go. It definitely did not go. It did not go to acting lessons
or story.
That's for sure.
Screenwriting.
Yeah, or screenwriting. Yeah, I don't know where it went, but hey, more power to them. So we joke, we kid, we have fun. But yes, Fast 9 made a lot of money, 70 million, and obviously all the articles came out this week. Box office is back. Yes. Summer is saved. We need a hero, and the hero is Vin Diesel.
And you realize it's the second lowest gross in opening weekend for a Fast and Furious movie, right?
Yeah.
Being the first was Tokyo Drift, which had Han in the movie, and now Han is back, and now they have the second lowest grossing. Now, look, I get it. You could say pandemic. I get it. And 70 million is positive for sure. But I don't know. We're putting too much emphasis on an opening weekend and not enough emphasis on longevity, because I think it almost appears that Hollywood has given up on longevity. We've collapsed the windows, and we don't care. The movie just fizzles out in 3 weeks. Who cares? It's going to be on demand. Yippee. But they don't seem to quite understand that if it doesn't really perform on box office, where people talk about it for 3 weeks, their on demand ain't going to be that great, because they seem to forget that it was how good a movie performed in a movie theater is what perpetuated home video sales. So if a movie did really good, it was a good bet that once it went to VHS or DVD, it would increase rentals, and then once the sell-through market became a reality, it would increase the sales of that too. But it all depended on how well the movie was received by audiences, not necessarily critics, but by audiences. So just because you have an opening weekend, if no one talks about you after your opening weekend, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to bode well for your on-demand view. But how will we ever know, since they don't talk about their on-demand like they used to talk about rentals and sales, which they still talk about sales a little bit. But anyways.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up, because, there was a lot of, every time something gets like a Blu-ray release nowadays that, was supposed to go just to streaming or came out on a streaming platform, I feel like in our bubble, right, our little entertainment bubble, there's always like this article or a bunch of chatter that comes out and like, oh, Luca is getting a Blu-ray release.
Right.
And then people are like, why? And then other people are like, save physical media. I would love, and I know there hasn't been one that's been done on this recently. I would love to know the numbers of how many people still buy physical media versus buying like a digital copy of something.
We can look it up. I know there's a website that I check out daily called Blu-ray.com. They're a really relatively decent website about that physical kind of media, right?
Yeah.
They not only do reviews, but they have there's a lot of news on there about upcoming Blu-rays and what special features are going to be. But they also every week will they have that report. And they'll say, "Oh, Soul is still number one in sales," and things like that. So, Blu-ray.com is actually if you're into physical media as I am, and it's actually too how I find out what's coming up, because I actually do purchase physical media. But Scott, you bring up an interesting question and point. So when you say a movie like Luca or Soul or Mulan. Now, I know I'm talking strictly Disney Plus, but I think it also fares for like Netflix and Amazon.
Right.
If I know
the Criterion Collection releases of like The Irishman or Marriage Story. Yep.
Right. And those are going to come with some extras that certain audiences who enjoy those are going to like. But when you have a Luca and it's on Disney Plus, is there really a need for a family to buy the Blu-ray now when all they have to do is basically turn on their TV and go to Disney Plus and they can watch when Luca is free, which it's not, which it is right now. That's how I watched it. The kids can watch it over and over and over and over and just put it on repeat on their TV. You don't need to get a Blu-ray anymore. I have Soul. I will probably get Luca on Blu-ray as well, just because of whatever special features they may put on there. There was one special feature on Disney Plus that ran about 12 to 15 minutes long. And it was pretty good because it was all about the crew going to this little provincial fishing town in Italy. And it was how they transferred that to screen and animated it. And it was really actually fascinating. And I love this sort of thing and how they contextualize and textualize buildings, the ocean, things like that. And did you know that Luca, actually the fishing town that they were in, there are all these legends of sea monsters and things like that. And that to me is so fascinating because I truly love Luca.
Well, it's fascinating that you're talking about this because I wrote, and many people supposedly wrote articles about this. The same exact story you just told. So the fact that many people wrote about this and you're watching featurette and you're learning about it for the first time, I have thoughts on how I feel about people reading articles, since especially since you, of a lot of outside of a lot of people, read articles on a regular basis.
Wait, what are those articles talking about? And hi, Gianna. So what exactly are you talking about?
So I'm talking about how Disney does these early press days, and the early press days are always to kind of educate us as journalists about the behind the scenes magic of a Disney animated film.
Right.
So I've been doing them for a long time now. I started doing them, I think, way back when, like Cars 3.
Okay.
And what they do is they used to take you up to Pixar, obviously because of the pandemic, can't go to Pixar, but you go and do almost like a 2-hour college class they walk you through the animation process of Luca, how the story came about. They bring in animators, story artists, and all this stuff. So I will say that I've done a lot of them. So the novelty sort of wore off a little bit, just to be completely transparent about it. But it is fascinating the first couple of times you sit through them and kind of see how the details, the attention to details, and where the story is created. And there's always something interesting to come out of them. So I don't want to downplay the whole thing. But what I'm ultimately getting at is the fact that part of our jobs is that we are supposed to release 1 or 2 specific articles tied to the press day. So that press day, which is supposed to educate readers about Luca or Toy Story 4 or whatever it is. And your response just kind of triggered something of like, oh, we watched the video. It was great learning about this. But there was sort of all this content that was supposedly put out by not just my outlet, We Live Entertainment, but by dozens of outlets. So to me,
was it before the movie?
Yes.
Okay. For me, I mean, a couple of things on that. Number one, I think it gets a bigger push when you know that there was really no, I don't blame We Live Entertainment or any of these sites. There was really no push on Disney. I feel I have a better understanding why movies like Luca and Soul have gone directly to Disney Plus. And I'll share that in a moment if you care. But Scott, I really don't read an article like that prior to a movie afraid of spoilers. Like, not that you would include them. I'm not saying that you do. I like to go into a movie like that or anything just with the marketing material that's on hand. So that's the trailers and whatnot. I buy the Blu-ray of a Pixar movie to get some of those details later after watching the movie. I find that stuff fascinating to me as a movie fan.
Yep.
After the fact, meaning after watching the movie. Then I love to dig deep and go, wow, that's great. And I matured because as a kid, we didn't have all this information that you're saying you have now. So I would read Fangoria or some semblance of like Sci-Fi magazine, and I would read about Friday the 13th kills and how they were done before seeing the movie. And I think that's how I became more of a horror fan. But today there's so much out there. I don't want anything spoiled. And I love now, and this happened before you watch the movie, right? Before you watch the full movie.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you get like a special 20-minute glimpse of the movie?
Yeah, they show you about anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes of the movie.
Which is fantastic. I'm very envious of that. But when it's done, it's like watching the special features, I don't know, to like the Star Wars movies or Lord of the Rings or any James Cameron thing that comes on to Blu-ray. You see the little documentaries that they used to do in great, awesome detail. And you'll learn about the movie. It gives you more of an appreciation. This was on Disney Plus. It was probably, you probably saw it at the press day.
Yeah.
Because it was just the director and the team going to Italy. So yeah, I just find that the Blu-ray has, like, that was one 12-minute piece, and that was on the streaming. Okay.
Yeah.
If you get the Blu-ray, there's a likelihood that I'm going to get way more about, I'll get a commentary. I will get more documentaries about how the characters, all this stuff. I mean, Disney actually still does a half decent job of putting a Blu-ray together, I believe. So that's why I'll buy Luca. But it's fascinating. No, Scott, I please forgive me. I didn't read your article.
No.
Had you sent it to me,
I'm making a point, and I think you actually made a even bigger point than I was expecting to hear. And the reality is that people don't read stuff or watch stuff for the most part leading up to most movies. And I think studios try to push content out early and it gets lost. And I've actually had arguments with studios about this because they've always said, we want this out before the movie comes out. And to me, the only thing that I'm reading as a movie fan, and I've been a movie fan and an entertainment fan my entire life, is that the only thing that I have ever read before I even done this, before I did journalism, was I would read a review. I would read reviews or I would watch reviews. And that's the only thing I would do. And then if I like something, I would go back and say, oh, what did Chris Pratt have to say about Tomorrow War? And then I would watch some interviews, or I would read, oh, that was an awesome scene in that. I wonder how they pulled it off. And then I would, either pull out the Entertainment Weekly or a magazine or watch a video of how they made the creatures in Tomorrow War. Yeah. And I think the studios kind of have this backwards where they're pushing out this content. They're trying to do this like lead into it. And your response sort of echoes what I've been saying to them, is that it gets lost prior to the movie coming out. That yes, it's great that it's there, but it gets buried on the site. So now instead of Lucas content being up on the weekend that the Lucas coming out, where people would search for it, it's now, on the second page, and people are not going to search for it. And I think that's always been my point, is that reviews early, the reviews, word of mouth with reviews as early as you can get them. No, I shouldn't say that. Starting a couple weeks prior, not like 2 months prior. Like I think In the Heights, I think people got so burned out. Like one of the problems with In the Heights was like they put so much effort into that movie that they started it like in like February or March, that by the time it came out, like I think a lot of people already thought it came out. There was just too much. But start a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, start lead in, do like they do. And some studios do a very good job of this. They kind of do the early press day screenings, and then there's early reviews, and then there's a next set of reviews, and then there's week of release reviews. And that's smart because they're breaking it up. But this content that they want to push out, like this stuff should be coming out like this weekend, like now after people are watching it, maybe even early next week when there's actually conversation about the movie. Not so much Friday, the day of release, because people are not watching this. They're forgetting that we watch stuff in advance, and and the average person doesn't watch it this quickly.
It's Scott, and I'm sure the people who are joining us right now, I'm sure that they remember this. Think about how it really used to be, right?
Yeah.
To your point about reviews, sure, if it's a good movie and it gets good reviews, start getting some of them out there, right? But leading up to the movie, all it was really were trailers, a lot of television ads, and they would get the talent on certain popular talk shows. With The Tonight Show, Oprah. They'd have them all over TV, so people got the sense that the movie was coming out. They would spend a hell of a lot of money on television advertising, which, with so many people watching streaming today, that's changed because I really don't know who watches a lot of network commercial TV. Then the movie would come out. Then with that, there's the excitement. And if the studio had what they see as a potential runaway, right, they would follow that up. And that, to your point, is when the articles would start to come out. This is the making of, here's Stan Winston talking about how he made the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, or, this was the first computer-generated image of dinosaurs running. All of that stuff, and it perpetuated a marketing campaign that kept people's excitement. And by that time, a lot of people may have already watched the movie. It's not spoiling anything. And I think that machine worked. I honestly, we've been in this pandemic mode for over a year, and they really still haven't figured out how to quite market these movies. You say In the Heights was done months ago, and I can kind of understand why they tried that, because they were going on two fronts: HBO Max, theaters. They haven't figured this out. Now, when you talk Pixar specifically, the one thing you and I talked about this week about Luca, there's a learning curve, especially on the high concept Pixar movies. What do I mean by high concept? When you look at something like Inside Out, right? What's Inside Out really about? How do you explain that to someone? You can't do it in just one trailer, because it leaves people, huh? Same goes for Coco. How do you explain this de los muertos, and how this boy gets sucked into that world, and how you do it, and how do you do a Soul, right? And Luca, for that matter. They're higher concepts. And if you think about how Pixar and Disney would market their films, it started about a year prior to the release of the movie. And each trailer was a learning curve. Like, you were subliminally being educated as to what was going to happen and how this movie was going to work. Same with WALL-E. Do you remember, it didn't really even come out that WALL-E was basically a silent movie until like the week of release.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? It was all because of how they would market these movies. And you were, as an audience, if you took you were being educated so that by the time the movie came out, you had an idea that what Day of the Dead is, how Coco gets in there. Same with what Inside Out was about. Like, these are the feelings and emotions in your head, and they can talk. They have a shape or form. Same thing goes with Soul. Like, what's Soul about? And then Luca. And what Pixar, in my opinion, is great at, especially in those high concept movies, is the first 10 to 15 minutes of those movies is educating you on what you're going to see. And they've already had about a year campaign. When you look at Soul and when you look at Luca, they didn't have that. It was all taken away from them. So it made sense to me after some thought. That's probably why they went straight to Disney Plus, because people really didn't know, and it's kind of like Mulan and Cruella are just really easy to sell. Like, you could put that on Disney Plus and say $30, because you kind of know what this is. It's an origin story or something, right?
Yeah.
But the harder Pixar movies, I think they need that maturation of marketing. And then, to your point, Scott, think about, because I remember we met at CinemaCon 2019. Didn't you just come from Toy Story 4?
I did, yeah.
Right? So think about that and how that kind of feeds into their education of the audiences to get them primed for what they're about to see. So that's my theory, and that's this happens to be the one that I'll stick with.
My theory on these two Pixar movies is essentially, I agree with what you're saying. I think there's always been a really brilliant marketing campaign behind Pixar movies that do educate the viewer. So I'm 100% on board with you on that. I think that these two movies, regardless of how I feel about them, I think the audience for them, they're tougher sells on audiences. Luca, to me, has this problem overcoming. It's the same way I felt about Onward, where I felt it was very male driven. Like, it was a movie that was not as universal in terms of this can be for anyone. I feel like this was like a male-driven coming-of-age story geared towards, little kids, but also obviously as adults, we resonate with some of the themes explored in the film. But I think from a marketing standpoint, I think that became difficult, and I think we saw that. And I know it's kind of unfair to label Onward in that way, but I think Disney had bad juju about that before the pandemic even happened, because I felt like they felt like the buzz wasn't there. There wasn't a lot of conversation about it. It was sort of one of those Pixar movies that even before pandemic, there just wasn't a lot of chatter about. Soul was interesting because I think that got kind of sucked into the middle of the pandemic and a loss. I also think that was kind of a hard sell, which is why some of the themes that I feel in the movie don't work, like the whole cat thing. To me, like the cat thing in Soul is what hurts Soul, because it's so targeted to such a kiddie demographic, because they know that this is such a high concept and it's so geared towards adults and it's so geared towards maturity that they had to do something like a cat to kind of lighten this up a bit. So I think, again, I think they had doubts about that connecting with a younger demo. And unfortunately, because it's animation, I think we have so many movies that ride on the fact that they're family and not just adults. There's still this weird concept that we have in Hollywood, outside of like a South Park movie, that there aren't a lot of animated movies that are made specifically for adults.
Sure.
So I think that was kind of a hard sell for them, knowing that there's a Disney brand, a Pixar brand, and there's geared towards families. So I don't know. Long story short is that as much as I agree with what you're saying, I felt that all three of these movies would not have done gangbusters at the box office. Is it saying that they would have flopped? I'm not sure, but I think they would have all underperformed by Pixar standards.
Interesting, because I kind of have my view is a little bit different. And again, had they been given, and again, I think Soul is as hard to sell as I think that Inside Out and Coco, and I think that a lot of Pixar movies, including WALL-E, even Toy Story, the original Toy Story, I think that there's an element to most Pixar films that is geared towards adults.
Yes, of course.
That kids aren't going to understand. And I think that's the beauty and magic and wonder of Pixar, is that the children can watch it today. It's whiz bang, colorful, it's funny, but as they grow up and they have kids of their own, the adults will look at that movie like Up. Up, I think, is a perfect example. No kid has ever been married and lost,
like
right?
Death and stuff. Yes.
All right. So when I look at a movie like Soul and even Luca, and I'll push back a little about what you said about Luca, because the girl in Luca, I think, was beautiful. I loved her. I loved that she was the one that schools Luca. I love that she inspired Luca to. Those aren't fish. Those are stars. Like, I love that it was that little girl that really gave Luca his get up and go. I want to learn. So, and Soul, we talked about Soul well before it came out, how that was going to be difficult because it was jazz. And what 12-year-old even knows what jazz is, right? When they're on a steady diet of like Taylor Swift. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but their palate hasn't matured enough to understand jazz. And that's what Soul is about. That, again, hard sell. And given they had the right marketing push, you would have known more about why that cat is, right? So maybe you would have accepted the cat a little more. I don't know. I can't get into your head, and your opinions are great, and I understand them. but they were given that time to breathe from a marketing standpoint. And I don't know. I think Soul would have done really well. And I think Luca, both movies to me, it was a disservice for me not to be able to watch them on an amazing, like a Dolby or a beautiful screen, because each represented an artistic beauty as well. And you could, it's what Pixar always does best in their shading and lighting and capturing water. I mean, think about Finding Nemo, right? How amazing Finding Nemo looked and how they got the underwater sequences so beautiful, right? Think about how the technology is so grown. And I was watching Luca, I was going, God, this is beautiful. I was half expecting Nemo to swim by or crash, right?
He's probably in the movie somewhere. He's probably in there. Like someone's going to find an Easter egg like 5 years from now and be like, he's in this scene behind this rock or something.
Yeah. So, and this is what's great about this show, because we started off on something completely different.
I put on Twitter, I said we were going to go on a tangent or two, and Lord knows that we were going to go into a tangent about Soul and Luca.
And Pixar, but I think that's why going to Disney Plus made sense.
Yeah.
For them. But going back to the original supposition about marketing and the studios still have to figure out what to do. And at this point where we are at the pandemic, I think they have to kind of revert back to how they used to do marketing since before the pandemic. The only thing that's different, I think, is your television advertising. I just don't think people are as watching as much network as they are streaming. And that's gonna hurt.
Well, since we're on this topic, I saw someone post this today on Twitter, and I literally laughed at this because, again, reoccurring topics, themes, conversations that happen on this show, and one of the things is the oversaturation of content. And we have so many movies coming out in theaters, so many movies coming on streaming, so many movies that are doing kind of like the combo deal where they come out on streaming and in theaters at the same time. But I wanted to post, I didn't even know this, so I saw this morning, and it actually made me laugh. So this weekend saw the release of the following movies. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The Tomorrow War, No Sudden Move, Summer of Soul, Zola, The Forever Purge, Boss Baby Family Business, America the Motion Picture, Fear Street Part 1, 1994. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about too much content coming at once. Half those movies, I would guarantee that the average person has no idea what half those movies are, where they can watch them, or how they can watch them.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, Scott, because there's no schism or dichotomy. There's nothing separating for. One of the things I think you mentioned was, I think it's a series. Fear Street, that's not a movie.
It is a movie. It's a movie. It's three movies. It's basically 3 movies that are coming out 1 week following the second week and then the third week.
Where?
In theaters and on Netflix.
Well, okay. Well, there you go. I mean, that's it. You can't. No, again. This is what's killing everything. No, I'm sorry if you're seeing it on Netflix. I mean, it's just like the Chris Pratt thing. That's on Netflix. I mean, right. I'm sorry, you can see it. I know that Cinemark is probably playing it, and you can go see it at a theater. We're never going to know what the box office gross is. We have to stop. you can't conflate what is on Netflix as to what's being released, other than saying this is what's being released streaming, this is what's being released theatrical. I know Zola is theatrical. I know that Boss Baby is theatrical. And I know Forever Purge is theatrical. That's what I know. Those are being released this weekend in a theater near you. Now, we got to stop this. You can't, it gets lost, and this is where audiences become confused. Jenna, thank you. It's so confusing. Yes, thank you, Jenna. It's not just us. You're right, Jenna. It is so confusing. You don't know. And if you think that a movie is coming out theatrically and you plug in Netflix, you go, wait, I thought this was, what are they talking about? I have a question, Scott, for you in the audience, the people who are on. How long do you think this hybrid is going to last?
The theatrical versus and streaming at the same time?
Yeah, like say HBO Max. What they're, how long do you think before Warner Brothers just says, nope, we're gonna stop, and this is theatrical only?
I mean, I think we had this conversation before. I think what's going to happen next year is that they're going to make decisions. They're going to look at their, I mean, if, again, this is how I feel about pretty much every single studio. So if you want one guy's humble opinion, I think you really have to look at your slate of content coming out. So if you're Paramount and you have 12 different movies coming out in that year, I think you need to, you're going to have your Paramount Plus, and you want to, you're putting your money where your mouth is. You want to build that brand, right? You want to build that brand. So you're going to have to give reasons for people to subscribe to that. Not just your movies, but you want your TV shows. You're going to have to create content. So I think if you have 12 movies, you have to look at what you have. And I think you're going to have to decide what route you want to go. So if you have A Quiet Place, you say, okay, previous 2 movies, really good at box office. This seems to be a very profitable franchise for us. Let's keep this one. We're going to put part 3. We're going to put that theatrical only. Then you have, I don't know, let's just make up a title. Tom Cruise Conquers Mars. And you say to Tom Cruise Conquers Mars, we've worked with Tom Cruise a lot. It seems like outside of Mission Impossible and Top Gun, Tom Cruise movies kind of don't do that great. So let's make that a streaming platform exclusive. And then you go back and you kind of just go like that. You have educated conversations, and you bring in people, filmmakers, critics, journalists, whoever, and you have these conversations, and you kind of say, here's our slate of films, show them content like they do at CinemaCon, right? They say, here's our upcoming slate of like the 20 things that are coming out in the next year. And you kind of read feedback off of it, and you say, would this do well in theaters, or will this play better on streaming? And that's how that's how I think you decide. I don't think it's going away either way, but I think the day and date, they're going to have to figure that out, because there's got to be some loss there happening. There has to be some loss.
And my thinking is kind of a hybrid of what you're saying.
Right.
Because I do agree that, but it's got to be people who have like a sense. So I say you kind of fall back on your streaming as the studios used to fall back on their VHS DVD releases. Meaning, you have a franchise like A Quiet Place 2. Quiet Place. First one does really well. Second one does really well. We don't know about the third one yet, but let's, for the sake of conversation, let's say it starts to do really well. 4, 5, 6 the grosses tend to start to level off and start to dip. Then you go, okay, our next one's going to go Paramount Plus only. Kind of like what they did with DVD. They would start making these sequels to movies. Disney was classic. They would do like a Mulan 2 that would never get released in a theater, but they did it for Blu-ray or DVD because it would sell, because they know that the parents would buy it for their kids. There are other movies like that awful, it was supposed to be a Cloverfield sequel.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
That to me is, you look at it and you can go, okay, Netflix, do you want this? Because this is awful. Like, you kind of have a feeling for what you can. But again, you have to have studio executives. And not that, again, I think it's proven time again that a lot of studio execs, they either don't love the business or they really don't love movies because they don't know. And once you start playing around with certain things, I don't know. I think day and date should go away. And that a movie should earn its stripes from a box office perspective. And until it's proven not to be so great at the box office. And then you still have that franchise that you can turn it into a television series on Paramount Plus, or you could just make these lower budgeted things to fuel your Paramount Plus.
I agree. I think studios, I don't know why we play this game that like people don't realize what they have, right? Like to me, it's weird. Like, cause like, I know we like kind of have these conversations all the time, and like studios are always like, I'm surprised, blah, 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 this did well. And I'm kind of like, are you really though? Like, like, I think when you have like something like A Quiet Place, it's that weird thing where they premiere it at a festival. They don't really have any stars in it besides Emily Blunt. And I understand why they would think initially that's a risk. Like, I can understand. But they also have to factor in the fact that the budget on that was so low.
Absolutely.
And it's a horror movie that they were going to do okay. Like, it was going to make at least back its budget. They didn't know it was going to blow up to be the huge box office phenomenon that it was. But when I hear them go about, I'm trying to think of like a name. I mean, even when I was growing up, but I don't know, like In the Heights. I mean, I'm not trying to beat this movie down, but like, to me, I watched In the Heights, and I literally said to myself the moment I was done watching, and I said, "Who's going to see this movie?" And I'm like, Middle America, not seeing this movie. Internationally, not seeing this movie. Latin audiences, Latin culture, they have movies that are made that represent their culture all the time. Hollywood tends to forget that. They think they're doing such a great job because they made one movie that, focuses in on representation, when their entire culture, there's a film industry there that makes movies specifically for that culture. Just like with Asian culture, like, oh, Crazy Rich Asians didn't do that well in China. I wonder why. Because they go to the movies, and you know what? They're called movies. Because they see their people on screen all the time. But so it makes me laugh when studios kind of say, "Oh, I'm surprised this didn't do well," or "I'm surprised." Because to me, you can be educated and know, like, a Judas and the Black Messiah is not going to do well. Like, who's the audience for Judas and the Black Messiah? Like, it's kind of like no one. It's for awards people to say, "Oh my God, did you see that performance? It was such a great performance." The average person's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to want to watch 2 hours to be depressed about this. So no, thank you."
My only thing with that is, though, I think given no pandemic, Judas and the Black Messiah, I think, is a perfect example of that type of award film.
Yeah.
That it creates its own tidal wave of like buzz. So theatrically, I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand too. I'm not saying the Judas and the Black Messiah was going to be like a blowout, like start of a franchise picture. But I am saying that like with this wave, with this critical good wave, and people are really liking this movie, that theatrically, I think it would have done okay because number one, it wasn't what was the other Daniel Kaluuya movie we talk about that is so goddamn depressing?
Oh, oh God, I don't want to get this wrong, but it's with Lena Waithe wrote it, and
that's the one.
Yeah,
that's the one. That's the
I'm
one.
gonna look it up. I'll look it up. You just keep going. I'll find it.
I'm saying, being that this is a true
Queen and Slim.
Oh yeah. See, that's different than I think Judas and the Black Messiah, which I think is, again, I don't want to get skewered for saying this, but I think that it's more palatable for adult audiences to take, right? And it's showing something that is a slice of life. And God, it was far more accurate than I anticipated, because I did the research. Again, I did the research on it after I watched the movie.
Right.
And wow, I was like, holy cow, this is a really good, solid, impactful movie. And I do believe that audiences do enjoy that, especially adult audiences. I think that Judas and the Black Messiah would have had a shot, theatrically, that it would have done. I think it would have done okay, because it would have been right around that award season. Your point about In the Heights too, right? Again, I think under normal circumstances, it's hard to talk about In the Heights because of the controversy, but I just think that as a musical and as what it said, I told you, I said this last week. You know, I believe in my heart that my wife would have really appreciated that movie for what it accomplished. And as a musical, I think that it was really good. It's not flawless. It's not flawless. It's not a perfect movie, but I do remember leaving the theater going, yeah, I get it. Yeah, this was good. I actually smiled. I smiled while I was watching a movie. Go figure. What a concept. And I think, again, given our normal way to market movies, I don't know. Like In the Heights, to me, it's an in-betweener. We have the 2020.
Well, the problem is that, again, In the Heights has those moments that where, like, part of me says that it should go theatrical because of like the spectacle aspects of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so when you have the pool scene or the skyscraper scene, like Spider-Man, those are moments to me that feel very much lived in and like wow factor when you see it on a big screen. 100%. And then there's other aspects of this where you're kind of watching and you're like, okay, this is fine if I watch it on a small screen. So you're right. It's a very difficult show. I mean, I felt that way about The Prom too. Like, part of me was like, if The Prom had a theatrical release, would it been more of a conversation starter than it was just going on Netflix, where it was basically critics panning it, where audiences didn't have the chance to see it in theaters to kind of make up their own mind, because we always use The Greatest Showman as an example, is that critics did not understand what Greatest Showman was, but the audiences connected with it because of the story and the music. The music moved them and people connected with it. Mm-hmm. So I think people would have connected with The Prom, especially. That's an interesting one, because I think people in middle America, teenagers in middle America who were like kind of like lost and like finding themselves, would have really connected with the two girls in the movie. I agree. And I feel like they didn't get that opportunity to do so because of Netflix.
And I also give you credit for encouraging me to watch the prom. I did. And again, a pleasant surprise to me. I did not think I was going to enjoy it. The first 10 minutes or so, I kind of was like, Scott, what did you get me into? But I let it breathe and let it play out. I think I told you the scene in the mall in the prom. I thought was probably a highlight for me. But yeah, I think In the Heights is one of those in-betweeners. And but again,
but you're not surprised. Like, there's no, to me, what the conversation of why we brought that up was that to me, it wasn't like a surprise of like, this is not going to be a huge box office draw. Like, I for some reason, like, I mean, maybe this is a bad example since we're having such a longer conversation. I can't think of another movie right now, but there's just so many movies where like I can watch it and I can just say to myself, like, there's no, like, are you surprised this didn't do well? Like, I guess Hitman's Bodyguard 2 is a good guy, right? Like, you watch that movie and you're like, if this was on Netflix, this fine. Like, this is a perfect Netflix movie. But a theatrical movie with a $70 million budget, you're surprised it didn't do well?
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's 31. Yeah, I mean, we're in a weird place, I still think. But I do want to go back for a second, talk about. I agree with what you're saying about like why Crazy Rich Asians doesn't resonate in China.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You know, it's actually how Pantaleon built their name. You know, my wife was head of marketing there, and her thing is like the Latin audience they don't need to be pandered to. They love movies. They love action movies. They love horror movies, you know, and things. So when you look at their biggest hits, right? Instructions Not Included. That didn't pander to like the Latin audience saying, "Hey, look, everybody, we're Latin."
Yeah.
They had Eugenio Derbez, who was huge, right? In Latin TV and media, right?
Yeah.
But they put him in a humanistic story, something that he had never quite done before. That's how it resonated. It resonated from a story standpoint that happened to have Latin players in it. So
another good example of this, I also think is, you remember that movie came out a couple years ago, and I think they were surprised that it did well, like for what it was. Low Riders, remember that? Like they were kind of surprised, and to me, again, that was them. Like that was just someone making a movie that was made for the community without this forced pandering. Like we're talking, like it was literally like, this is the culture in like this neighborhood, and like you will resonate with, which is kind of ironic, you know, now thinking about the In the Heights controversy. It's almost the same thing. Like it's one specific type story that like was like made about that neighborhood. Not, you know, very much the same way that In the Heights was.
Yeah.
But yet they're like the reactions to it were completely different, even though like they're kind of the same.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess because one didn't have that big studio push and the other one did, right? Like, so that's what it was.
Well, absolutely. But also look, I will be the first to tell you that I did not think that we needed an Overboard remake. I really didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I love Overboard. Don't get me wrong. Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn. I didn't think making a remake with Eugenio Derbez and I forget who the
Anna Faris.
It worked for Pantaleon.
Yeah,
it worked.
It was okay. It was okay.
But it did. Yeah, you're right. It did better than I expected. And again, it's because they didn't pander. And you have a popular actor who, let's just say it right now, he's in Coda. And I think it's the best performance he's ever given, period. So who knows? Maybe that'll cross over as well. So anyways, I think it's a great topic conversation. And I do agree with you 100%. Once you start pandering to it, but I didn't see Crazy Rich Asians as a pander. You know what I mean? And I don't see In the Heights as a pander either.
It was kind of pandering. I think the whole entire marketing campaign here in the States was like, look what we did. But the thing that was interesting, and I think we talked about this last week or the week before, I forgot how many times we talked about a lot of these movies. Because again, it's funny. I gave you a list of 10 movies, but this is what happens in the industry. Only a few movies ever get talked about in discussion. So they're the only ones that live. But Crazy Rich Asians, to me, had something that was fascinating that happened, was that the Asian community banded together when people were trying to tear it down. Because there were people trying to tear Crazy Rich Asians down. I will never forget it, because people were like, it's not all Asian Americans. Henry Golding is British. He shouldn't be cast in this. And you know what? The Asian community got together and said, no, we are supporting this. We are happy this has happened. We don't care if some of the people are from Britain. Who cares? Let's just embrace this for what it is.
Absolutely.
And they pushed forward and they killed that controversy.
Yep.
It's the complete opposite that happened within the Heights. Everyone jumped on board of it. And then the people who you would think would have came out to like kind of say, you know what, we could have done better, but you know what, let's celebrate what we've done. The Rita Moranos and whoever, they basically just stepped back and said, you know what, guys, you're right. We should have done better. And down it went. And there was no sense of community there. There was, and that's a much harder discussion that should not be had by us. But I just think it's weird.
But again, listen, the Greek community got way behind My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
I agree.
I mean, the Greek community were just thrilled that Greek was in a title to any movie, and they laughed. They laughed and they cried at that movie, and they were telling people, "Oh my God, that's exactly how I grew up." And they banded around that, even though half that cast wasn't Greek. It didn't matter. They didn't care. And I just remember I had, oh my God, I had so many. Oh, did you see Big Fat Greek? Oh, it's so the Windex, and there you go. My grandpa, all my papu, all these, and there you go. Put some Windex on it. It was such a slice of life that I think every Greek, I knew Greeks who just never went to the movies, but they saw that and they didn't come out and poo-poo all over it. They came out and they laughed at themselves because they knew that that's how they grew up. And nobody said, oh, that person's not Greek or that person. They didn't care.
I mean, that's what I think the problem is that when Hollywood does something that's different, and I mean, they need to realize that they have to embrace it. And I understand. And again, I feel like a broken record because I say so many things on repeat. But like, you have to learn and know that Hollywood, like if they have a failure, they're going to be like, you know what? That didn't work. Let's get on the horse and try it again. Like it's not like a kid on a bicycle. It doesn't. There's a lot of money involved with these things. So if they say like, hey, we took a $40 million loss for this, that's not really an incentive of saying, you know what, let's try again. That was really worth. Let's potentially lose $60 million on this next one. I think that's. People have to look at it from a business point of view. And like, if you want to celebrate it, yes, you can have criticisms about it. And by all means, voice those criticisms. Yeah. But don't try to take things down to the point where you're going to hurt the movie from ever existing, another one kind of existing anytime soon.
I'm glad you said another one existing, because it doesn't hurt. It's not just hurtful to the movie. It's hurtful to the industry because they will never want to take that risk again. And you're right. You're absolutely right, Scott. 100%.
All right. So real quick, before we jump off, since we're talking about In the Heights, let's talk about In the Heights more. So we had our mid-season awards. Very small thing that we do here, where we do it all digital. I think there's so much buzz around it. I feel like we can do like a virtual ceremony at some point, but not this year. But got a lot of traction, and I mean, it was a great. The thing that I would say is that the nominees, to me, I like the nominees more than I liked the winners overall, because I felt like the nominees were a perfect balance of mainstream cinema and indie film. Mm-hmm. And I love that, because Demetri and I always have conversations about this. What's wrong with the film world now and the award shows is that they forgot how to celebrate movies that are both independent and mainstream. There's usually 100%. One mainstream movie thrown in the mix just because, like, hey, Joker, a lot of people talk about that. Let's throw Joker in there. And you kind of, you know that it's not going to win majority of what it's nominated for. It might get lucky and win one. But it offsets the Nomadlands and the, One Night in Miami's and all this other stuff that outside of film Twitter and film universe, normal people don't even know what the hell it is, where to watch it or anything. So that was one of the things that I loved about seeing the nominees come out, was that I love that I can have A Quiet Place and I can have, a censor in the same nomination process, right? And that they can be celebrated, and that there can be an In the Heights with a nobody. I think it's something that I am most proud of about our organization and the members that are in it is when it comes to nominees, I think we do a really great job of picking the nominees. In terms of winners, I think we sometimes get a little bit of tunnel vision. With things. Demetri and I spoke about this. We're not going to go into detail about this a little bit earlier about a longer conversation. But overall, I think a lot of the films that were nominated, I hope, get the sort of attention they deserve as we move into the second half of the year. Demetri, you have anything to say about this?
I agree with you 100%. And being a person who, Scott, that I really changed direction and tack from, I needed something to focus on, and I needed to keep my writing chops on. I'm not as big as you are, Scott, when it comes to the film criticism world. So, the studios aren't like the Universal, Warner Brothers, and Disney's aren't sending me links to watch a movie, which I would happily do. But I have built up somewhat, I guess, of a reputation where I'm on a lot of the independent movie things, and I kind of switched gears and said, you know what? Well, I need to stay creative. I want to write. I want to continue to do reviews. And who am I? Like, this is being afforded me. These people are coming out. Here are review links available for Undina or for Come True or something. And I'd say, okay, sure. I want to review it. I want to watch it. Slacks is a great example too.
Yeah.
I'd go, okay, sure. Let me watch it. And people were kind enough to give me a link, and I appreciate it. When everyone gives me the opportunity to watch a movie, I appreciate it a lot. So I got to watch a lot of those independent movies that you were talking about. And look, for the people who are art house snobs, here's a news flash for you. There are a lot of shitty independent movies too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yes, there are. Yes,
don't just poo-poo commercial films. Like, I get it. There are bad commercial films.
Yes.
But there are a lot of bad indie films too. And I watched them, but I also got to see a lot of really good horror movies. I saw some really good comedies, some really good dramas, and I'm thankful and forever grateful. But you're right. I'm glad that some of them saw the light of day in our nominations, because I just thought that they need the help, because no one's gonna, nobody knows what the hell Indina is. Slacks? How many people do you think saw Slacks other than you and I? But tell me,
25 people.
How fun of a movie was Slacks? How fun! How really amazing! Well, I don't think you still have seen The Vault yet.
No,
but The Vault was one of the better heist movies I've seen in a while. I had such an excellent time watching The Vault, and I had a great time watching Golden Arm, which is on Cinemax, I think, right now, folks. So if you have it, look for Golden Arm. What a charming, great comedy that was. So yes, Scott, I did this because it afforded me the opportunity to write, to hone in my review skills and watch and do these videos. But also I did recognize that they made our list. And I think it really is amazing. But I was also proud that In the Heights got as much as it did, because I don't think there's enough love for that movie, and we appreciate it for what it is. And we both have come out and said, not a perfect movie, but appreciate it for this. A lot of the things were pretty cool that we had. I was a little bit surprised on the category, because I love the category, by the ways. Most anticipated film for the second half.
Yeah.
Second half. And it was Edgar Wright's A Night in Soho.
Last night
in Soho. Yeah. I mean, can't wait for it. Don't get me wrong. Jesus Christ, I've been waiting for frickin' James Bond. It seems like for 5 years now. So, but I think it's my favorite category. In fact, I love that category.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun to pick those, and I want to say real quick that, and I said this in the little press release that I wrote out on the site that I put out, was I think it was fascinating because there were so many movies, both in nominations and in winners, where they were so close. Like, I mean, if we had to go like to a number of votes, like there was like a lead, and if like one person didn't vote one, there would have been like tied for like that 10th slot for the best picture. There would have been like 10 movies tied. Like that's how close so many of these things were. And I'm talking about, like, let's say 15 votes. Like there would be a movie with 16 votes, and then one with 18 votes, and then with like 19 votes. Like they were so close. Like literally every vote mattered. And if everyone submitted the ballot, I feel like some of the stuff that was nominated might have not been nominated. Some of the stuff that won might not have won. But yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, just in the acting categories, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were certain categories where there was like a clear winner. Like Millicent Simmons for like best actress was like clear winner. Like she had like 40-something% of the votes. So like it was like easy. But then when you have like supporting actor, and I know this was one that everyone kind of commented on yesterday, was like when you had Olga from In the Heights versus Emma Thompson. Like those were neck and neck. Like one vote or two votes would have changed that. It would have flipped. And I don't think people realize how close some of these are. And I have no problem disclosing this kind of information, because to me, if you're doing this right, there should be no reason to hide this information. You can literally say it was really close. It was like one or two numbers off, and it would have changed the game if we got 2 more votes in or something like that.
I think it also shows our appreciation and, more importantly, our fandom for movies, and what we all, if you don't mind me saying, what we appreciate and support.
Yeah,
and I think it's a really great thing, because it shows that we're paying, that we watch.
Yeah, so, absolutely. All right, Demetri. So that's it. What would you? Let's end. We did this a couple weeks ago. If you have something to recommend to someone to watch this weekend, it's a long holiday weekend. What would you recommend they watch?
This long holiday weekend. Okay, you want to know what I'm going to watch this weekend? Does it have to be something that's out today, or it's going to be anything?
No.
Right? Okay, so I'm going to go celebrate the 25th anniversary of Independence Day. Well, there was a great article today. I know I posted it on the cinescope.com. I sent it to you. Great oral history of Independence Day, and also I wanted to bring this up. Today in the movie universe of Jaws, today is July 2nd.
Yeah.
We're heading into that Amityville Regatta. The Amity Island Regatta, which happens on July 4th, 1975. And that's where all hell breaks loose on Amity Island at the beach. So I will more than likely watch Jaws. I do have a quick Jaws trivia question. How many people how many became a hot lunch for Bruce the Shark in Jaws? If people can comment on our website, I will give the answer next week. But it's kind of a trick question, but it's not if you pay attention to the movie. Who became a hot lunch for Bruce the Shark in Jaws? You think it's easy, but it's not. How about you, Scott? What are you going to recommend to people?
I think it came out on Blu-ray this week, if I'm not mistaken. I know you still have not seen it, despite my recommendation. I am going to say Nobody. Go check out Nobody.
I want to see it. I think I pre-ordered it. I'm sorry. I couldn't get a link to it. And I was too afraid to go to the movies at that time.
Oh, no, I don't blame you for being afraid to go to the movies. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend that. And I'm going to jump on the Fear Street bandwagon. I have not watched it yet, but I am super duper excited to watch it. It seems like something that I'm going to love. And Netflix? I can't wait to watch it.
Wait, where do people watch Fear Street?
They watch it on Netflix, or I guess it's playing in select Cinemarks, since they have a deal with Netflix now, and you can go see it in a big screen if you actually.
So we can see it on Netflix.
Yeah, I can just see it on Netflix. But yeah, that's actually probably what I'm gonna watch this week. And I mean, if you have kids, I didn't hate. Listen, I know people really shit on Boss Baby 1. I thought Alec Baldwin as the voice for that, for something about it. It was very funny. I mean, because it's such like he has such a distinct manly voice. To like literally listen to him go like cookies are for closers. I just sort of like laugh at the fact that someone greenlit that, because it just sounds like such a stupid idea. And I appreciate the stupidity of casting Alec Baldwin as a baby.
Oh, you always make me laugh of like what you find. Like, I find it funny what you find funny. It makes you laugh. I just laugh with you. I don't laugh at you. That's very important. You'll know when I'm laughing at you, but I laugh with you. So, hey, man, have a great 4th of July, everybody. Enjoy your Independence Day. Be safe. Watch out for those firecrackers. Don't lose any digits.
And if you're going swimming, stay away from sharks.
Oh my God. I sent you a video. Did you see that video of the parasailer? Folks, this is like not a doctored video. Don't go parasailing. It's always been a fear of mine. Like, a shark jumped out of the water and bit a parasailer on the foot. So yes, watch out. It's not our ocean. So anyways.
All right, everyone. Have a good 4th. We'll see you next Friday.
Bye.
Bye.